Okay, thanks everybody for joining us. So this is the first in a workshop series that is part of the Employer of Choice Assist program. Employer of Choice Assist, I'll give you a little bit more information on at the end of the session, but effectively it's funded through Jobs Tasmania. Before we get started, I'll also just acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on whatever you are meeting with us today. This session is really about trying to validate if you have a great workplace. So we might think that we have a great workplace, but how do we really know? So we'll go through some ways that we can find out why people leave, why people stay, and some strategies to keep our people. And I will give some more information also on the Employer of Choice Recognition Program and how that fits with the workshop topic that we're discussing today. I will send you a copy of this presentation along with a survey at the end of the session today. So if there's topics that you're interested in, then please pop them into the survey and we can look at running a workshop on those. Alrighty. So what is Employer of Choice? I think we might have a couple of Employers of Choice in the session today. It's a recognition program. It's not an award. So there isn't, one winner at the end of the recognition program. It's about being recognised as being a great workplace. The program's been around for about 15 years and we have a number of businesses and organisations that have been recognised already across all industry sectors and sizes. One of the great things about the Employer of Choice program is that it recognises that businesses of different sizes and different sectors will be able to do different things in order to attract and retain their workforce. So really an Employer of Choice is an organisation that can demonstrate that employees are valued and they get consulted with about things that happen in the workplace. It's a great strategy to be an employer of choice because it really helps set you apart from your competitors, particularly in this kind of labour market where, finding good applicants is sometimes challenging or actually often challenging. And it really also takes into account what sort of workplace systems, processes and policies that you might have in place that makes it easier for people to understand what they need to do, who does what, and if they're actually doing a good job in their roles. The Employer of Choice Recognition Program is managed by Jobs Tasmania. So one of the first things that we would like to know is are our employees planning on leaving? How do you really know that? Not many people will walk up and tell you as an employer, by the way, I'm planning on going somewhere, so get ready to replace my role. So there's a number of things that we can do to try and gauge what the likelihood of people leaving is. So often we assume that if we're not getting any feedback from our employees, nobody's complaining about something, that they're happy and they're planning to stay. And we've had lots of examples of employers that have been taken by surprise when people that they thought were really happy in the workplace have handed in their resignation. And often there was probably things that workplace could have done, which may have meant that the employee might have stayed. So some of the ways we can tell if people are happy at work is through an employee engagement survey. Maybe you'll just go and observe how people work together. What's the general vibe of the workplace? Do people communicate well with each other? Is there generally a pretty positive, helpful vibe? You might look at having one-on-one meetings with team members just to check in. They don't have to be a formal kind of thing. It might just be once a week, once a fortnight, depending on how many staff you've got, once a month, just to see how people are going and what's working for them and if there's anything that we can do that might make their life a little bit easier. One of the things in how people communicate is some people will come and tell you all of the things that are wrong and the things that they want, even if you don't ask them. But there's a whole section of our workforce that are not going to do that. They're people that will sort of wait or maybe be quietly dissatisfied or wanting something or have great ideas. And if we don't provide a forum for them to share those ideas and those thoughts, they'll often keep them to themselves. You might think about a performance review process. So that looks different depending on the size of your business and how closely managers, business owners and staff work together. But this can be a really great sort of snapshot in time as to what's working well, what that employee might want, what their intentions for the future are, and identify some opportunities that we can use to develop those employees, or potentially identify areas that we might be able to work on to help improve their job satisfaction and the likelihood that they're going to stay. As I said before, just those informal check-ins and conversations around the workplace. Often people might make comments, and I think it's really important that we actually listen to those comments. Sometimes it's really easy if we're busy just to dismiss somebody as, you know, they're just having a whinge or having an event. And sometimes it is more than that. Sometimes people actually want something to be done for them. I had an organisation that only a few weeks ago had this issue, that people had sort of been making informal comments to their manager about some issues around workplace relationships. That was ignored, and as it turned out, it was ignored for an extended period of time, and it ended up resulting in pretty serious bullying allegations, as well as the employer losing a couple of key staff because it wasn't picked up on and it wasn't addressed early. And part of that is really that active listening to what's not being said, or exploring what people are saying in a little bit more detail to see whether or not it's something that you need to get involved in and manage, or whether it is actually that person just having a bit of a vent and getting something off their chest. So a 2023 survey reported that about 37% of Australian employees plan on changing their job in the next 6 months. And these are the top 4 reasons why people want to change roles. So they might be looking for some more money. They might want to further their career. Sometimes people are leaving because they're just sick of working so much and feeling like they haven't got much balance in terms of their work life and their personal life. And the other reason, and this is a really big reason why people leave, is that it's poor leadership or workplace culture, and often that's linked back to the person's relationship with their direct manager or supervisor. So we'll have a bit of a look at what that might mean and what we might be able to do in order to prevent people from leaving that we might have otherwise been able to retain. It's a costly and a time-consuming process to replace staff when they leave, particularly staff that are valuable to the organisation. We've all had experiences where people have left and we've gone, yes, that's great, but it's the ones that we don't want to go that we really want to be able to try and find out if they're planning on leaving and if there's anything that we can do to keep them. The other thing is, if we're doing this actively in our workplaces, it also helps to attract employees, because people talk about what a great workplace it is, how people are, rewarded and recognised in line with their contribution. There's opportunities to learn, there's a good work-life balance, and there's a good workplace culture. Great reasons to go and work somewhere. And being Tasmania, most people within their own industry know who they want to go and work for and who they don't want to go and work for. And given that you're all here today, I think it's pretty safe to assume that you want to be one of those workplaces that has the reputation as somewhere people want to come and work. So if one of the reasons people leave is because of money, wouldn't it be nice just to keep throwing money at people so that we kept them? We can't do that. Often it's not feasible to be paying people more. So if we can't afford to increase wages, what sort of non-financial benefits might we be able to offer in order to recognise and reward employees? So there's a list here, and as I said, I'll send this out to you at the end of the session, so you don't need to, frantically write them down or screenshot. You might look at whether or not you can provide staff discounts. If you're a member of the TCCI, there's a number of discounts that you can access through your membership that will also be passed on to your staff. You might think about flexible working arrangements, and I've talked to a lot of employers about how they might do this. One of the things with the rapid pace of change we're currently experiencing is that reconsidering what an actual working week looks like. So it might be providing some time for people to go to a school assembly or to go and volunteer. It might be looking at a number of workplaces have moved to 4-day working weeks, and the evidence so far is kind of showing that they're seeing an increase in productivity, not a decrease. If people do want more money, perhaps you can link that to a performance improvement. If somebody's like, I think I deserve more, great, what are you going to do for that? And how can you negotiate something so that you're actually getting a little bit more, which might offset the cost of providing a performance bonus. One of the things we see on employee engagement surveys is that people really value staff social events. Doesn't necessarily need to involve alcohol. It might simply be a barbecue, once a month on a Friday afternoon, or whatever your workplace can reasonably accommodate. Another non-financial benefit that people will often ask for is a company vehicle. Again, that's not feasible in all businesses, but if you do have company cars that sit in your car park overnight, or of a weekend, is there a way that you might be able to equitably offer those to staff as a benefit? The other thing that is also a good idea is looking at whether or not there's coaching and mentoring opportunities, and that's not just for the employee. It might be actually taking that employee's skills and experience and asking them to coach or mentor a less experienced staff member. So that can kind of work in two ways. And if we communicate that effectively, that's actually a great way to recognise somebody's skills and knowledge by asking them to share those with somebody else in the organisation. Or if people want to grow and develop, identifying ways in which you might be able to coach and mentor them to do that. You've also got things like formal training and development opportunities. So whether that's internal training, it might be supplier training, it might be external training opportunities, either accredited or non-accredited training. You might look at whether or not there's some networking opportunities for them, other things that you get out and about to that perhaps some of your other team members might like to come to. Providing an employee assistance program and support for mental health in the workplace. It might be things like mental health days, birthday day off or additional leave. And only just today I was looking at an employee engagement survey and somebody had put that in there as a benefit that they would really value. I know that we offer a birthday day off. You just got to take it within 4 weeks of you having your birthday. You might look at additional leave if that's something your business can accommodate. So there's a number of things that we can do that don't necessarily involve us increasing somebody's take-home pay every week. And it really is just about recognising that what might be a benefit to one person is not necessarily a benefit to other people. The other area that people leave for is that being able to progress in their career. Now, if you're in a business that has got very low turnover or a fairly flat structure, not everybody can be a manager. So you might look at things like upskilling them in particular areas of their job role or the business, whether or not you can cross-skill or multi-skill them. So you can look at sort of job enlargement or enrichment opportunities as opposed to potentially going up. They might like to act in a different position, or if another role comes up in the organisation, they might be interested in moving sideways. So, internal advertising of vacancies and considering internal applicants is a great way to help people see that there are other opportunities within the business. You might increase their level of responsibility, or if you've got somebody that you find out, maybe they're working in your organisation, but they really want to be, a nurse or a teacher or something like that, perhaps you might be able to work with them to see whether or not you can keep them in the business, giving them some flexible working arrangements to accommodate external study that they might like to undertake. So there's a few things we can do in that area, but also if you know that that's an issue for your business, in some ways you kind of need to accept that at some point you are going to lose staff because they've learnt all they can learn and they're going to move on to other positions. And, that's just par for the course. So that's why it's really good to have good recruitment and induction processes so that if they do go, you've got a nice streamlined process to be able to replace that person. Work-life balance and burnout. This has been really interesting since COVID. So people have really taken a step back from, working a bazillion hours a week and measuring their performance or their value to an organisation by how many hours they put in. And some of the reasons for this is that, if people are working over 40 hours a week consistently, the evidence suggests that they're not actually very productive. Their concentration diminishes. They're much more likely to be sick or experience physical and mental health problems. It can lead to an unhealthy workplace culture. So, if you do have that workplace where it's seen as a bit of a badge of honour to be the first person at the office and the last person to leave, that might be something that you need to look at. But also considering what sort of behaviours is management or the business owners modelling that might be encouraging people to think that, working lots of hours is valued by the organisation. It's really about what people achieve in the time that they're there. People leave, people get sick of being overworked, so they eventually go. And the other thing we find is that people tend to be less engaged, particularly if they don't feel like they're recognised or valued for their contribution to the workplace. So achieving work-life balance is no silver bullet here. It's really about asking employees what they need and recognising that everybody might be a little bit different on that, depending on people's responsibilities outside of work. We do a workplace motivators kind of training session, and we talk about 3 different types of employees. So we've got workaholics, ski bums, and balanced individuals. And so workaholics are people that really do derive a lot of their motivation and their satisfaction from what they achieve at work. A ski bum is somebody that goes to work so that they can earn money to go and enjoy their life outside of work. And a balanced individual, as you would think, is somebody that gets a little bit of motivation both within work and outside of work. And if you're thinking about not wanting to have ski bums in your workplace, don't, because as long as you have really clear expectations for what somebody's supposed to be doing at work and how we want them to behave, and we manage that effectively, whether or not somebody's a workaholic or a ski bum should be irrelevant. Everybody should sort of know what it takes to be successful in their roles and contribute to the team. We need to manage people's expectations. So, you know, we might have some people that work-life balance means I'm just going to work less, or, you know, it might mean that they want specific things. So, you know, talking to people about what you can and can't do and trying to find a compromise in that space is a really good idea. You know, encouraging people to leave work at their scheduled finish time and take breaks. You know, if you're entitled to a lunch break, have a lunch break. Thinking about and looking at your workplace culture, whether or not those long working hours are celebrated, or whether or not it's something that, you know, isn't encouraged. And viewing that work-life balance as an investment, not a cost. So if you look at the cost of people being overworked and productivity and engagement and turnover, realistically investing in making sure that people feel they've got a good balance should be seen as an investment, not a cost to the organisation. Making sure that workloads are equally distributed. Something that many managers and owners are guilty of is that we give all of the jobs to the people who we know are going to willingly accept them and do them. And if we've got a few people in the team that we know are a bit of a pain when we ask them to do things, we tend to not necessarily give them as much work as the people that we know will get it done. So that's something that you can kind of reflect on and make sure that workloads are equally distributed. We're not loading up a few people because we know that they're going to do it with less pushback. Encouraging employees to care for their health and well-being. So that might be, you know, encouraging people to exercise. It might be encouraging people to eat well. I was talking to an organisation the other day that were looking at introducing a no smoking policy for their entire workforce, which was great, but they've got a fairly high percentage of smokers. So thinking about how they might be able to support people to make better choices as opposed to simply banning smoking in the workplace and, you know, potentially upsetting people's job satisfaction by making them behave in a way that they're not willing to behave in. We also want to make sure that managers are role modelling that work-life balance as much as possible, and creating a process so that people can have make a request for work-life balance. Recent changes to the Fair Work Act sort of give people a little bit more rights in terms of asking for flexible working arrangements, and there's a fairly stringent process that needs to be followed now if somebody is asking for some flexibility in their working hours or in how they work. So if you have any questions about some of those new requirements, just sing out after the session and we can point you in the right direction. So people stay because they have, you know, competitive compensation and benefits. It's not always about who pays the most. You know, a lot of research shows that once people kind of get to a certain level in terms of their wages, it's really about the benefits and the workplace culture and the work-life balance that keeps them there. The opportunity to grow and to develop and learn new things, even just simple things like recognition within the workplace. You know, recognising when people are doing a good job. It doesn't have to be, you know, something where they get their photo on the wall as team member of the month. It might be something a bit more subtle than that or something a bit more creative than that. People stay because they've got a good work-life balance and they get that kind of flexibility that they need in the workplace without being made to feel guilty for it. People stay because they enjoy the work that they do. And that was really interesting when I was looking at the responses to some employee engagement surveys around the things that people like about their job, and it's the actual work that they're enjoying. People stay because there's job security. There's transparency within the way that the business operates and the communication with managers and staff, and they trust each other. Strong values and culture in the workplace. So the workplace is a place that people want to be at, and they operate, you know, along consistently with the values that they talk about, as well as having supportive leadership and colleagues, which is kind of part of that, having a good workplace culture. So I'm not going to go through all of these. You'll get them. They're just some questions that you might want to consider if you're putting together an employee engagement survey. We've got a template version, which I'd be happy to share if anybody wants it. But it's questions around, how people feel at work, whether or not people can actually go on holidays and not worry about critical or time-sensitive tasks. And it's actually alarming how many people I've spoken to over the years working with employers that they go on leave, but they still have to have their phone on, or they still have to run payroll, or they still have to do these jobs while they're on leave. We really want to be able to structure our workplace that people can go on leave and turn off their phone and turn off their laptop and not worry about what's happening in the workplace. It talks about teamwork. It talks about what sort of benefits people value, what sort of things that they might like to see, their relationships and communication. You can talk about whether or not people feel like they've got everything that they need to be able to do their job. Really interestingly, one of the responses I got, and it was a business where people had to bring their own tools into work to fix things. So, I'm not sure if the owner of that business knew that that's the case, but now they know about it, they can do something about it. And in that workplace survey or the employee engagement survey, a really good question to ask is how long people intend on staying with you for. That gives you some idea of what your turnover might be like in the next 6 to 12 months. So it's a really good question to ask, particularly if you're running an anonymous survey, because it's probably much easier for people to kind of go, well, look, I'm probably only going to be here for the next 6 months. I'm actively looking for another job. So in terms of what the business, if you really want to do a simple check-in with staff, this start, stop, keep comes from a lean kind of thinking. So if anybody's done any kind of lean training, like lean manufacturing, it's really about asking, what could we start doing that would improve your job satisfaction and performance? So what do you want us to do that we're not currently doing? Then we look at what we should stop doing. So are there things that we're actually doing in the workplace that are really affecting your ability to do your job, or whether you're enjoying your job? And what things do you value that we do? So what should we keep doing? And you can pick this start, stop, keep up, and you can apply it to anything you want to know about. But it's a great way to get feedback, because if we kind of ask an open-ended question, you're going to get a whole bunch of random responses that might not necessarily be what you're looking for. So think about what the context is, and then, what could we start doing, stop doing, and keep doing that would actually either keep you here, make you more engaged, more productive, happier, whatever it might be. So the Employer of Choice Assist program, as distinct from the Employer of Choice Recognition program, is a support service for businesses with 20 or less employees. Look, if you're sitting here going, I've got 22 employees, does that rule me out? Still reach out. We're not too strict on that 20 or less employees. It's really designed for businesses that might not have their own HR department or experts in relation to the sort of things that businesses can do to create and maintain a great workplace. The Employer of Choice Assist service is completely free, supported by Jobs Tasmania through the Department of State Growth. We can provide human resources consultancy. It might be things like, can you review my policy? Can you help me put together a performance review process? Can you have a look at my employment contracts? Anything sort of human resources, workplace relations related. This is a pretty good deal if you fall into the small business category, because usually this kind of advice, you either need to be on hold for I don't know how long to Fair Work to get it, or you pay a fee generally. So part of the Employer of Choice Assist service is also helping businesses apply to be recognised as an employer of choice. So we can sit down and talk to you about what you're already doing in your workplace that makes you a great workplace. And then we might be able to give you some suggestions and recommendations on things that you might want to tweak, or you might want to introduce that would help you get a little bit closer. So that recognition process usually is open around the middle of the year, and part of that process is that you submit an application and you get some feedback on where you're at, which is really great, because again, if you wanted that kind of feedback, you'd be looking at paying a consultant to do it. So even the recognition process is a really good process to go through just to see where you're at. And what will normally happen is you will be recognised as having applied, but you've got a little bit of work to do. So you'll get some feedback and you'll be able to come back next year. And most of the time, businesses that come back the second time achieve that employer of choice status. So some of the things that we've been doing with the businesses who are already accessing this service are helping them have a more cohesive workplace documentation. So it might be helping with an induction process, developing an employee handbook. It might be identifying some staff training needs. We've run a lot of employee engagement surveys. Or it might be something really simple. I had one client that really just wanted to know whether or not they should be employing contractors or employees for their business. Everything else they were pretty happy with, and they just wanted a little piece of advice. So it could be a little bit of advice, it could be a lot. It's really up to the business to determine what they'd like to get out of accessing the survey. So the service is funded by Jobs Tasmania, but delivered by the Tasmanian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So I'm just going to stop recording if I can find the button.